The Athletics are now the worst team in baseball. Hello and welcome back to the Athletics Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Ferguson, writer for the Athletics on SI, providing you daily coverage of your favorite baseball team. In today's episode, we are going to be breaking down the Athletics' tough 5-3 loss to the Rangers. We're going to be breaking it down to a few sections. The first one, obviously, analyzing the top performers from the games, players who deserve their flowers despite the loss. We're also going to be asking the question, should we be worried about JT Ginn after a somewhat rocky performance in the loss? And to cap things off, we're going to be talking about how the Athletics can potentially win the series decider on Sunday, today, when this episode comes out. But before we get started, I want to thank everyone right now who is watching, whether that be Apple Music, Spotify, or even YouTube. It all means a lot to me, and I cannot thank you enough. But with that said, let's get right into the show. So, another tough loss for the Athletics. And obviously, at the start, I did mention that the Athletics are now the worst team in baseball, meaning they have officially they're no man's land right now. The Rockies are better statistically than the Athletics right now. The Angels are now fourth in the AL West, where the A's are now fifth, and it's just looking so bad for the Athletics. And keep in mind, we are in a very tight race for the AL wild card. I mean, there's not many. I mean, pretty much every single team has a shot at making the playoffs. They're only like 2.5 games behind for the most part. Um, and the Athletics are one of those teams who simply do not fit the criteria anymore. And that just goes to show where this team is right now. So, but like I said earlier, the first thing we're going to be talking about is the top performers from the games. And obviously, we're going to start off with the leadoff hitter, Henry Bolte. He's been really good as of late, and I really have, enjoyed it. We know what his tools are. We know how fast he is. He's starting to get a little bit more power into his swing. I'll kind of get into that in a second. And overall, I think he's just a versatile threat. And obviously, he is a little rougher on the edges. We've seen, a lot of fielding errors in the past, inconsistency at center field. But overall, he's starting to kind of figure it out. He's starting to get on base more. He's starting to be more aggressive on the base paths. And like I mentioned earlier, he is starting to hit the ball out of the park. Granted, it is Sutter Health, so do what you want with that information. But he has been playing good. In the loss, he would go 3 for 5 with 3 RBIs, all three coming from his 3-run home run. I believe in the second inning of the game. So amazing game from Henry Bolte. Really love how he's playing, and I just love him as a player. I mean, for one, he wears 33. That was a number that I grew up wearing when I played baseball and other kinds of sports. So it's awesome seeing that in an athletics uniform. Cool last name too, Bolte. It's really awesome. But I'm getting off topic here. I'm kind of not talking about baseball, but yeah, he's playing really good right now. And we've seen Jeff McNeil hit leadoff, and then Bolte has been hitting ninth. I thought that was a little bit weird considering what Bolte is able to bring to the table. I think back to the Red Sox series, right? When he was able to hit a single, then right away, Jacob Wilson would drop down a bunt, second batter of the game. It would cause an error, and then all of a sudden you have runners on second and third, and that gave the Athletics an edge very early on. And I think he is still capable of that. And like I said, he went 3 for 5, 3-run home run, a double, and a single. Um, Similar to what Jeff McNeil was able to accomplish in the game prior, right? Obviously, McNeil had an extra double though. But yeah, I'm really loving how he's playing. And like I said, he's fast. When he gets on base, he's going to be a problem for a lot of players. I mean, a routine ground ball to third base could potentially be a base hit for Bolte, and that's what you love about, what he can do for this team. And knowing this team and watching this team, observing this team, there's just a few things that needs to change. Obviously, the offense needs to, create a lot of more production, right? But again, putting pressure on the opposing team is going to be key for the Athletics if there's any hope of turning the season around, which, like I mentioned earlier, worst team in baseball currently, it's not likely. But like I said, if he can, be that jump start early on in the game, that leadoff spot, even if he's hitting ninth, we never know what Kotze is going to do with that leadoff spot. Like I mentioned earlier, McNeil's been there for a little bit, but his ability to, maybe stretch a single into a double, every, once in a while, kind of things like that. That's going to give the Athletics a huge advantage offensively. And again, this pitching staff has been terrible all season long. Historically, one of the worst, teams in athletics history. It's been a very long time since the Athletics have been a team to just kind of put that in perspective. So it is a little bit concerning what this pitching staff is. But again, kind of getting off topic. But yeah, but if Bolte is able to be that, that bolt in the Athletics, lineup, allowed them to score early, then all of a sudden the Athletics look like a completely different team. There's less, pressure on the pitching staff that, like I said earlier, has been abysmal. But yeah, loving how he's playing right now. The second player I want to mention is Alika Williams. He made a nice defensive play in this game. He went 2 for 4. He scored a run. He was also able to hit a double, which in my opinion probably could have been, if taken advantage of, the Athletics might have won this game. You know what I mean? I mean, you can play that game all you want. What if, Jeff McNeil hit a home run in this inning? But I'm not going to go that far. But like I said, 2 for 4. And I think this is an impressive performance from Malika as well. And like I mentioned earlier, he made a great defensive play. And with Jacob Wilson, sidelined, he got hit in the hand in game one versus the Rangers. Alika is going to have to step up. And I think this is going to be a time where Kotsay is really going to pay attention to what Alika's role will be like, for the Athletics. So as we know, the Athletics infield is starting to get a little bit crowded. Obviously not now because of injuries. Obviously no Nick Kurtz or Joshua Cordegrauer right now. But when those guys come back, you got to ask yourself the question: what is Alika Williams' role going to be? For the Athletics, is he going to remain that utility guy in the infield, play second here and there? Shortstop, obviously, when Wilson needs some rest. There's a lot of things that you kind of have to consider with what Alika's role is going to look like. Is he going to have an amazing end of the season? I believe there's like 39 games left in the season. Um, that could definitely be a time where Alika can really rise his stock. And I'm not saying he's going to be the starter over Alika or, even McNeil at second with how he's been playing, next year. And obviously McNeil is going to be a free agent. But, maybe a trade could occur. I mean, Alika is fast, a good fielder, and we're starting to see his hitting really improve. So, I mean, if you're a team, shopping for an infielder, a guy who can play multiple positions, that could bring the Athletics a big haul. And as I mentioned earlier, obviously there's problems in the pitching staff. Obviously I would say the farm system is not really up to par right now. I believe Fangraphs ranked the Athletics, in the bottom five in terms of farm systems. And I think if Alika Williams can have a really good second half of this, or to finish out the season, all of a sudden maybe the Athletics can get something here in the winter, or even at next year's trade deadline, which could significantly alter this team depending on how well he plays. If he stays with the Athletics, I still think there is a good role for him as that kind of utility guy, but I don't want to see him get sent down to AAA because I feel like you're just wasting a really talented player right there. So good game from Alika Williams and Hunter. I mean Henry Bolte. Both players young, looking good for the Athletics right now. Obviously, the season has kind of been a dud, so it's probably not going to result in much. But at the end of the day, you love to see success where you can find it, and those two players delivered it. In terms of pitching, I want to give a shout out to Brady Basso. He's been a guy who I've really enjoyed watching pitch. I feel comfortable when he's on the mound for the most part. 4 days ago against Tampa Bay, he would give up a run in 2 innings pitch, which again, you can't really be too upset about that. But besides that, I see a lot of zeros against the Tigers on July 31st. He would give up 2 runs, and then you got to scroll, or, you got to look really far until you see, even more runs scoring, which came against the Rockies in June 14th. So he's been a really consistent pitcher for the Athletics as of late, and I'm really liking how he's going to play. And again, with the season ending, you got to really pay attention to how good, these relievers, these starters, these, position players are playing, right? To kind of give you a glimpse of what to expect next year. But what I can tell you now is that the Athletics are obviously going to change up their bullpen a lot. I think that kind of goes without being said. There's not many guys in there who you can say, I want to keep that person. I want to, see what they can do. In the next 2 years, there's not many guys like that for the Athletics. But for Brady Basso to come on, obviously not the greatest pitcher on the season. I think he has like a 4.3 ERA, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So he's been looking, fairly solid for the Athletics. And you got Hogan Harris, who has been decent as well all season. He looks like, obviously the Athletics closer. He has to be good. Then you got guys like Luis Medina, who I felt, maybe could have shown more in the first game of the series. But there is a good chance that Basso could stay for the Athletics next year. And I honestly like this team with him. And throughout the game, he would give up just one hit, strike out two batters. You can't really complain about an outing like that. Again, I kind of wish he would have made, a complete two innings, but he would get taken out, I believe, for Scott Blewett. So yeah, not a bad game from Brady Basso, loving how he's playing, but those three players are really the only ones who really caught my eye, who I felt like I needed to kind of mention. But yeah, solid outing for them. Hopefully they can stay consistent. Again, probably not going to mean an Athletics playoff berth if they stay consistent, but again, it's going to give the Athletics a good glimpse of what to expect here in the next few years. Obviously, culture change coming in with Vegas, and you just got to pay attention to the guys on the team right now. So, with that said, moving on to the second section of this podcast, and I'm asking the big question here: should we be worried about JT Ginn? And there's arguments for both. Obviously, he played a decent game. I'm not going to say he had a rough game versus the Rangers. He would pitch 6 innings, strike out 7 batters, but he would give up a home run. Um, which was, the game decider. It was a 3-run home run later on in the game. Yeah, I can't say I'm too sorry, it was a 2-run home run, and then there was a single from Corey Seager that also scored a runner. So, yeah, not the cleanest game from JT Ginn. Obviously, we know him as a guy who the Athletics can trust. The only reason why I'm asking this question now is because you got to remember his game versus Boston. He would only earn 1 run, despite three obviously being scored when he was pitching. And that, it was a little scary in that game in particular because you got to remember he only had 2 strikeouts. In the last podcast, I kind of talked about Ginn, how I wanted to see him potentially strike out more batters as a whole. He got 7, so you can't really complain about that. But yeah, I don't know if we're starting to see, if there's like a snowball going where it's just going to get worse and worse and worse, or if he's going to be able to turn things around in his next start. And for Ginn, knowing what he's capable of, obviously he's had a few games this season where he has had a no hitter, later on in the game. Uh, Obviously the unanimous ace of the Athletics, but he is a guy that the Athletics have needed to really rely on as a player, especially with how this rotation is formatted. Obviously, it's very top heavy. You get through this series in particular, right? I mean, you got Gage Jump game one, again game two, Jacob Lopez in the series decider today. Uh, Again, you just got to ask yourself, how is Ginn going to improve to make this rotation feel better? You know what I mean? And if he declines, what does that mean for the rest of the season? Are the Athletics just going to look even worse if they haven't looked, if they haven't hit rock bottom already? You know what I mean? But yeah, I really want to see Ginn turn things around. Obviously, again, it does suck to see him, struggle in this game in particular because, like, a series win was in the palm of the Athletics' hands. The Rangers are not playing really good baseball right now, and obviously the Athletics had a really solid game one, and in game two you have your ace on the mound, and he, struggles. I mean, besides obviously the 4 runs he gave up, he also gave up 8 hits, which is again a really concerning number. But yeah. I would say for now, I'm not too worried, but say next game or his next start, which I believe I can't really I forgot the team on the top of my head. It might be the Royals if I'm not mistaken, but um yeah, it's just something that you kind of got to think about. What does this Athletics rotation look like if Ginn falls off a cliff? And not literally, of course, but if his production continues to slow down, what does that mean for the rest of the season? Obviously, not much because the Athletics have hit rock bottom, in my opinion, but the rest of the season and beyond, do the Athletics get to 100 losses if Gideon continues to play bad. Because obviously, if one loss every 5 games isn't going to be the worst thing for the Athletics record. But again, you got to think momentum. The Athletics lose a game like this to the Rangers, and all of a sudden the momentum's on the Ranger side in game 3 with Jacob Lopez on the mound. Is that going to, have a negative impact on him? So yeah, those are some questions you just got to ask yourself. But like I said, for now, until I see it happen, again, obviously the Boston game where he only struck out 2 batters, only earned 1 run. Not really the best example of a decline, but it was definitely noticeable that he wasn't necessarily himself. But yeah, again, just got to wonder what is this going to mean for his future with this team as a whole? Because, like I said, the Athletics are going to make some serious changes to their pitching staff this offseason. They're going to bring in a new GM. And I'm sure whatever candidate is looking at the Athletics job right now, uh, knows what the biggest issue for this team is, and it's pitching. And if Ginn can't be that constant, who will be? Because we've seen obviously Gage jump, be up and down. He's jumped up, he's jumped down. And then you got Jacob Lopez, who was terrible for the first half of the season. Now all of a sudden he is, looking like the Athletics' best starter. But then when you look past that, Mason Barnett filling in for Jeffrey Springs. I call him the doomed duo, or I guess I could call him the terrible trio. If you had Jack Perkins to that to those two people, two pitchers. Sorry, I don't know what just happened there, but sorry about that. But yeah, you just got to ask yourself what's going to happen for this athletics rotation, because when you see some crackage, as we've seen all season, when it rains, it pours for this team. So yeah, not looking too good for the Athletics right now. But moving on to the final part of this podcast, we're going to be talking about what the Athletics can do to turn things around in Game 3 with Jacob Lopez on the mound. And I feel like it is pretty simple again. You just got to score early, and the Athletics have to be aggressive again. As we know, we can't really take leads for granted with this team either. Obviously, the bullpen has to be better as well. But for now, we just have to rely on the Athletics offense to start hot. Combine that with obviously Jacob Lopez's brilliance as of late. All of a sudden, the Athletics have a better opportunity to potentially win that Game 3. And keep in mind as well, the Athletics would leave 7 runners on base. That can't happen either. And I feel like early on, if you could, snap that, condition yourself to when runners are on base, the Athletics are going to be able to bring them in. That's going to be a good thing. So hopefully Henry Bolte is, leading off that game. If not him, Jeff McNeil. If they can get on base early, maybe lay down a bunt. Like I mentioned earlier in that Boston example, when Bolte was able to get to first, Jacob Wilson lays down a bunt, gets him to second. Just things like that are going to be important for the Athletics if they're going to be able to take this Game 3. And they haven't done it this series where, the first batter gets on and they bunted. But yeah, it just needs to happen. It needs to be aggressive. More bases need to be stolen to set up a potential early lead opportunity. And with Jacob Lopez on the mountain, with how he's been playing, there's a good chance that the Athletics could be able to maintain a lead late into the game. And by then, say the Athletics are up 3 runs, Lopez goes out in the fifth, sixth inning, whatever it may be, obviously there is going to be some kind of melancholy over that, Rangers dugout in a way. And that just has to happen if the Athletics want to win this game cleanly. But yeah, and we know what Jacob Lopez is capable of. He shut down the Rays. Obviously, yeah, the Athletics would blow that game. But again, I think it's just fairly simple. With Jacob Lopez, you score early, you're going to lead for a majority of the game, and that needs to be the emphasis. As for the other things, like the bullpen, I think what Kotze has been able to do in terms of, making changes, kind of, there's pros and cons. Obviously, we've seen guys like, for example, in Game 1, Luis Medina and Drew Rom, both having pretty solid outings, but then they would walk someone or give up a hit, and then Kotze would, bring them out immediately. Obviously that was a little annoying because obviously you want to see Luis Medina and see Rom, maybe touch 2 innings, something that we really don't see consistently from the Athletics relievers. Say you start that now. Sorry, my voice is just completely given out right now. Oh my gosh. But yeah, if you start now and kind of build that, endurance for these pitchers, that could pay off in the long run. And I keep reemphasizing this, but it might not even result to much. But again, having, seeing guys being able to pitch 2, 3 innings from the bullpen is going to be crucial in, building that bullpen for next year. And the bottom line is that's what the Athletics need to be looking to do, figuring out how these guys respond to certain situations and what that means for the team's future. But yeah, I think it's pretty clear. Score early, ride Jacob Lopez's, how good he's been playing, ride that into the later innings, and let Kotsay cook with the bullpen. And obviously, there are examples of when the bullpen, might have stayed in, or pitchers from the bullpen have stayed in for a little bit too long, and then they collapse. Obviously, you don't want that to happen, but again, it just they that is going to be that's the only realistic solution for this Athletics bullpen is to just cut the bleeding or stop the bleeding as early as possible, even if it's just a little bit of even if it's a scrape, you know what I mean? So that's pretty much it. But yeah, but just to recap everything I've talked about, a tough loss for the Athletics. This loss now makes them the worst team in baseball. And then you kind of got to look at the top performers and what to expect from them for the rest of the season. Henry Bolte, Alika Williams, Brady Basso all had a very good game, despite the loss. And then JT Ginn, will he respond? Will he come back? Will he bounce back? Things like that for future games. And I think that's an important question to ask yourself moving forward. And then obviously the keys to the game in the series decider, score early. Hope Jacob Lopez is able to keep that lead intact for a while. And like I said, with Mark Kotsay in the bullpen, stop the bleeding if it's even a scratch. That is going to be the keys to the win tomorrow. I'm excited. Hopefully, it goes well for the Athletics. And yeah, so that's all I got for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed. Also, make sure to check out all my content and my co host Dylan Quinn's content on Athletics on SI. We post daily coverage of your favorite baseball team there every single day. Multiple articles, happened again. Sorry. It's completely gone now. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. That's all I have. Make sure to follow me on X at AFergLV. And as always, have a good day and go Athletics.